Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, welcome. It's a busy day here at Virtuous. We've had a few different webinars going on because, why not? But thank you for joining us this is officially the first of our monthly training webinars for the year 2021. So thank you for joining us. And those of you that have been using Virtuous for a while, if you've attended these webinars in the past, you know that in past iterations, let's say, and certainly for the last year, we've really tried to stress connecting the Virtuous features to specific fundraising questions or processes or initiatives. Hey, how can you send better direct mail and segment more efficiently using Virtuous? And this year, we're kind of changing. We're flipping over for the year 2021 here, and we really want to go back to basics. So we're going to start with today's topic, which is nailing the basics. Because as I've gotten the opportunity to work with so many clients, right, in individual sessions, so many times when someone is struggling with some of the more advanced features in Virtuous, they're not sure how to create their query or craft the right workflow, what it always comes back to at the end of the day is someone's comfort level with some of the core structural elements in Virtuous. How do contacts and individuals relate to one another, and what data relates to those things? If I don't know, for example, that volunteer activity is tied to an individual, I have no idea what type of query to build. I don't know where to start, right? And so it's not necessarily that automation is hard or a query is hard, but it's that I'm not sure what kind of query to build in the first place. That's really where that challenge begins. So that's what we're trying to do today. We're going to begin that process by taking a closer look at the functionality of contacts and individuals, and tags and relationships, some of those basic structural building blocks that you work with in Virtuous. Now, before we get too deep into things here, as always, we've got a few different ground rules. So yes, popular question, today's presentation is being recorded and we will have this available in the Virtuous Support Center afterwards. So if I do happen to say something marginally intelligent, you can go ahead and check out the recording and share it with your team. Okay. Now, because we're recording, everyone is muted. I mean, that's pretty much how things roll on any webinar ever. No shock there, but we do want to allow for questions, right? Q&A is a big part of this. So please, as we're going through today, if a question pops up, if it's top of mind, just go ahead and use that Q&A box. You'll see it on the Zoom, the little buttons for the controls. Go ahead and pop that question in. We'll hold those questions till we get towards the end of the session. We'll have some time for Q&A, but please do go ahead, type those in, send them in, and we'll hold on to those and address those towards the end. Okay, now for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Scott Richards. I'm the Director of Training here at Virtuous. Happy to be doing this with you all for another month. And in terms of what we want to cover today, we talked a little bit about this, but as always, we do like to start by taking just a quick look at some of the newest features in Virtuous. We had a release not that long ago with some cool new stuff for workflows in terms of adding filters and reporting on your workflow activity. We've got the new reconciliation features for Virtuous Giving to show you Stripe payouts right there in Virtuous and tie Virtuous data with Stripe data together, make it easier to reconcile. And we've also got our new pass-through giver import feature, which is actually really slick. I want to make sure everybody kind of understands what that is. So we'll take a quick look at those, and then we're going to dive into our featured content for today. So again, understanding the nature of contacts and individuals and how to use relationships to tie those together. And hey, what the heck do I do with tags? Okay, and we'll look at some of that sort of in the abstract, because again, to me, if you can understand these core concepts, well, then the application of those concepts is going to be a lot easier. So we'll look at that in the abstract first, and then we'll take a look at all of that in Virtuous proper, just so that everybody can kind of connect those dots. And then, of course, we'll have some time for Q&A, and we will wrap up here for another month. All right. So first things first, let's take a look at some of those cool new developments, the coolest new things to hit Virtuous. And like I mentioned, there's a few neat things to do with workflows. So we'll hop on over. Oh, for crying out loud. You know, one of these days I'll learn how to use PowerPoint, and then I'll be dangerous. But we'll hop over here and we'll take a look in Virtuous proper. So I'm going to go to the workflows screen, right? We can go in here to check out automation. And right off the bat, you can see one of the new filter options, and that's just over here on the left. If you've got a lot of workflows, I do here, I've got several pages of them. This makes it a lot easier to find the workflow you're looking for. You can basically search by name. You can even use the search bar. That'll go ahead and just start searching by name automatically. But you can search based on the description, the date, and what I want to do here, which is, hey, I just want to see my active workflows. Right? I've got 2 here that are active. Fantastic. Okay, this one is just activated, looks like today, so it hasn't even run yet. Great. This one was just run this morning. Fantastic. So those are some of the new filters outside of the actual workflow itself. We've also got a new filter option when you're building a workflow. We'll look at that in a second. But the other thing that we've added is the ability to see engagement data. Now, I don't have a lot of engagement data here because this is a sandbox and it's all very fake. It doesn't wire up fully the way the live environment does. But we've got this new tab up here to view engagement details. And when I go ahead and view engagement, then I'm going to see a breakdown for each step in my workflow. If I've got multiple steps, I can select the step I want to view. I can select the time range I want to target here. And I can see how many emails have been sent, right, and opened and clicked. So how many text messages have gone out? Have I sent any letters or any other mail? How many tasks have been assigned? Hey, what are the things that are happening here within this workflow? And then for each of these, I'll also be able to see some statistics. How many people were enrolled? How many people were sent the email or opened it or clicked it? What does the email look like? This one looks pretty boring. And the same for letters. What does the letter look like? And how many people were sent that letter this week? So that now I have a little bit more insight into what's happening, right? So before, all that communication was just flying out the door. Fantastic. And if people clicked on something, I could go run some queries and see who clicked on any of my emails, or I could view their contact record. But now at a higher level, I can get a lot more actionable data on my workflow. Now, the other piece that we've added here, so let's go ahead and, oh shoot, we'll pick any one of these. Maybe it'll be this birthday celebration just for kicks. Here we go. So this one's set to send a postcard to someone a week before their birthday and then email them on their birthday. This is actually one of the best practice template workflows, pretty straightforward. But if I wanted to add a new step, so before, right, I had to go ahead and create my query. This is an individual workflow, so I had to create an individual query that I wanted to use with my step. And then I could come in here and I could add a step and I could go from there. Now, if I wanted to do something that was very simple, right, I didn't have a lot of complex parameters, those are still extra steps. But now I could come in and say, I want to add a new step. And by the way, I don't need to worry about a query. I just want to build a filter right in here because the only thing I'm looking for is individuals on a contact that is a household, right? And I want that household to be a donor household. So I want their life to date plus pass-through gift count to be greater than 0. I'm targeting specifically donors here. And I could go from there. I can add a few quick parameters, save it, and be done. Now, if I would still rather use a query, because obviously queries are going to be much more powerful, I can still opt to use a saved query and then go ahead and search for that saved query, right? Or again, I can toggle back to the filter. But that just makes it a lot quicker to add a new step, especially again, if your parameters are not very complex. Don't have to mess around, go to another part of the app and then come back. I can do everything right from here. Okay, so that's some of the cool new workflow stuff that we released. Now, for those of you that are using Virtuous Giving and are using Stripe as your processor, this past release had a big feature for you. That's the reconciliation features. And I've got that queued up over here, a little bit of a different environment. So if I go into the Virtuous Giving screen, I can go to the reconciliation tab and there I will see payouts from Stripe. Payouts are when Stripe actually sends the funds to your bank account. When do they deposit the money? So the payout date for a transaction does not line up with the gift date or the transaction date for that transaction. They are two separate things, okay? And I'll be able to see that in here. I'll know the payout date. Hey, here's what was deposited in the bank. Great, the status is paid. You may also see some in here that are pending because Stripe has created that payout. It knows what transactions are in there. It just hasn't hit the bank yet. So you might see that as well. And then I've got a few different ways that I can view this. I can view the gift detail, the project detail, or the project summary if I want to see a roll-up of that detail information. So if I click on any one of these, like the gift detail here, that's going to pull in the gift ID, the gift date, so you can see the date on these was on February 11th. The payout was on February 15th. Again, a little bit of a different date, a little bit of a gap in time there. And then what was the gross amount? What were the fees? And then what's the net amount? So here we have someone who clearly covered the costs when they made their donation. And here we have someone who clearly did not, right? I can tell that by the net on the other side. I can actually click to view the actual donation, right? If I want to see the gift information, I can see all that right from here. And then I can also come up here and download this as a CSV file to use in my reconciliation. So I no longer have to go to Stripe and view payouts and download the information there, and then come into Virtuous and download gift transactions and try to do some kind of magic to match those two up. Now we're connecting those dots. I know exactly what gift transaction this was and everything else. So that's the idea with some of those reconciliation features. Again, it is something that is only for those who are processing with Stripe. Stripe is the only one of our processors that allows us to have this feature. Okay. Now, the third thing I wanted to look at is something that, again, I think is pretty cool, and it might have gone flying by in the release notes, and maybe it didn't kind of grab your attention, but I think it can make a big impact, especially for those of you that might be getting frequent sort of combined pass-through gifts. Maybe you're getting a big file from Benevity, right, or Insperity, or from a local community foundation, or any one of these scenarios, where what you end up having to do is import 10, 15, 25 gifts, each of them with a different pass-through giver. Okay, and in that case, you might not even know if that pass-through giver exists in Virtuous or not. You may not be sure if they're a contact yet. Now, up until now, that's been pretty difficult to manage. I had to go in and either do a manual gift batch to go ahead and enter all of my gifts, and then I had to search for that pass-through giver. And if they don't exist, then I'd have to go ahead and create their contact and come back and do the import. It's a lot of work, right? But now I can actually download the gift import template, and that has some new fields to include information on the pass-through giver, their name, their address, their phone number, their email. And I can upload that file. And that's going to then use the same matching logic we use to identify the donor to help identify the pass-through giver. Okay. And so here I've got a file. It's got one gift in it, but it has a pass-through giver on it. And what actually happens is it gets split up into essentially two separate transactions. Here I've got the gift itself and the donor who made that gift, Steve Mitchell, right? And so here's Steve. He's not in Virtuous. It's telling me to create him, but here's all the information about the gift right in here. And then up here, it has a link that says, hey, do you want to view the pass-through contact? Well, that pass-through contact, they're already ready for import. You can see we've got a little number 1 there. And if I click on this link, that'll take me there to view that. And here's my pass-through contact. They were already in Virtuous. And so down below, I can see this is a pass-through gift. I can't do anything to the gift itself. I can just view some details about the gift because I'm not importing two separate gifts, right? I'm still importing one gift, but that gift is tied to two contacts. And so here's the data on those two separate contacts. Okay, and I can go back and view the pass-through gift again, so I can toggle back and forth here. But I could also go right to ready for import, and there's my pass-through giver. There he is. And when I view this at a high level, you can see there is no gift type because there's no gift here, and there's no gift amount because it's not applicable. I'm not importing a separate gift there. The gift is right here. Okay, so the one thing to keep in mind with this feature is you will see 2 transactions instead of 1. Okay, that'll happen when you come in here or when you import this type of file, but it is going to make it a lot more efficient to be able to process those imports without having to do all the additional research and all the additional legwork to see, okay, does this person actually exist in here already? Yes, no. Okay, I see some questions coming in, which is great. Please do keep using that Q&A box. You can send those in. And I promise I'll try to do a better job of making sure we have enough time to answer those questions. Those of you, again, that have been around for a while know I might have a tendency to talk just a wee bit. But I'm going to try to curb that best I can, just for you guys, just because I like you. Okay. So let's go ahead and dive in some of our featured content here. Okay, and we want to take a look again at sort of some of these basic concepts in Virtuous, most basic of them being, what the heck are contacts, right? What is a contact in Virtuous? Now, if you want to get into the really basic textbook definition, a contact is a record in Virtuous, and it can have one of 3 base types, right? It could be a household, you could have an organization, or you could have a foundation. Okay, those are my contacts. Now, in terms of who do I enter as a contact? Well, they may be donors, they may be volunteers, they may be vendors, right? It may be board members, it may be all 3 of those things. Who knows, right? Anybody that your organization has a relationship with, you'll create a contact for them. And even though you have these 3 base types, household, organization, and foundation, a contact can be any type of entity. Could be a school, a church, a club, a motorcycle gang. I mean, who the heck knows? The one thing, though, that a contact is not is a person. Okay, a contact is always a larger entity than just one person. That's the key differentiator here with a contact, okay? Now, contacts are the fundamental record type in Virtuous. My favorite description, I was doing a training, I asked somebody, well, what is a contact? And they said, it's the thing everything hangs on, which I kind of like because it sounds sort of like a Christmas tree, and hey, I like Christmas. But most data in Virtuous does relate to contacts. So we're talking addresses. Right? A household has an address. The different people in that household don't have separate addresses. That household has an address. It's a house, for crying out loud. Where is it located? And gifts. This is the big key one. Giving data relates to households, right? It's not just gifts, but it's gifts. It's pledges. It's recurring gifts, gift asks, planned gifts. All of these relate to a contact. So they relate to a household, or they're giving from a company, right, from an organization or from a foundation. If it helps, think about it in terms of tax entities, right? If my wife and I are donating, we don't each want separate annual statements at the end of the year. I'm going to file our taxes jointly. Give me one statement that shows what we've given as a household. And as a fundraiser, I don't want to have to look at 3 or 4 or 5 different records and do some math to figure out, well, how much have the Richards donated? I want to know how much has that household given, right? So all of that is tracked at a contact level. And then you have tags. We're going to talk about tags today, but tags relate specifically to contacts. Notes and tasks, those 2 things always go hand in hand, right? They're interactions with your supporters. Notes are the things you've already done. Tasks are the things you're going to do. Those 2 things specifically relate to contacts. As a matter of fact, in Virtuous, they are called contact notes. That's your dead giveaway that they relate to contacts. Now, for notes and even for gifts, I can indicate on there which individual in the household is tied to that, right? If a credit card gift comes in from my household, well, it's going to be my credit card or my wife's credit card. You'll have one of our names on there, so you can store that on the gift. And similarly, for a contact note, I can indicate, hey, I called, who did I speak with? I can select that individual, but at the end of the day, fundamentally, those gifts and those notes, they relate to the contact specifically. So if that's contacts, what are individuals? What's the idea there? Well, individuals, this is an easy one, right, at a basic level, because when we talk about individuals, they're people, right? They're the members of all those households, or they're the employees who work at that organization, at that company. They're the people who work for the foundation. Those are my individuals. Okay, so we said a contact is always a larger entity than one person, and then the people themselves are the individuals that populate those records. Now, individuals have data that relates specifically to them, right? Not everything ties into contacts. So what we call contact methods specifically relate to individuals. Now, contact methods is sort of an umbrella term. This is Virtuous lingo here. That's how we refer to phone numbers, email addresses, and social media handles or profiles. Those are all what we call contact methods. One individual can have any number of contact methods. There's no cap. And 3 of them could be email, and 2 of them could be phone numbers, and 1 of them is their Facebook profile. I've also got their Twitter, and I've got their LinkedIn, and all of that tied to their record. Okay, they can have as many contact methods as they want. And it makes sense that's tied to an individual. My wife and I have different email addresses, for crying out loud. Right, that's how that works. And speaking of email list subscriptions are tied to individuals. Right, 2 members of the same household might not have the same set of interests. They might want to get different streams of communication from you. So they can have their own separate email list subscriptions. That's not tied to the household, that's tied to a person. People get email. A household doesn't get an email. Last I checked, buildings don't have email addresses. And then you have event attendance. Well, it's very important to track event attendance at the individual level, because when I'm planning an event, I typically need a head count. I need to know how many human bodies are going to be in this space. Everybody remember events? They're the thing that you did before 2020, right? They're going to come back. But when I want to plan my event, I need to know how many people. If I said 10 contacts are coming to your gala, that could mean 10 people, that could mean 1,000 people. There is no way to know. So event attendance is tied specifically to individuals, and same with volunteering, right? I need to know how many people are going to come help out with this project. So volunteering is tied to an individual. Okay, and again, just knowing these things, right? Knowing this sort of information, well, this is going to help when I want to create an automated email series to everybody who's volunteering, because I need to know that my workflow should be an individual workflow. I need to know that my queries are going to be individual queries, because that's where volunteering data lives. Okay. If I want to use something like event attendance or volunteering activity in something that is contact-based, or if I want to use giving information in an individual automation or workflow or anything like that, I can still do that. But knowing this structure then tells me, okay, great, I'm going to have to use a nested query. I'm going to combine data from a couple of different sources into one query, right? But I can only know that if I know where this data lives in the first place. Now, when we talk about all these individuals and all these different contact records, right? That individual lives on only one record. Okay, so let's just use this guy here. We'll call him Dave. I don't know why he's Dave, but now he's Dave. Dave, he's got his household, so he lives at home. Great. Okay, that's where his record lives. Fantastic. But what if I want to tie him to multiple contacts? Because see, Dave, he also works for this particular company. Got a pretty good job there. And as a matter of fact, Dave's doing pretty well. He's even got his own family foundation, him and his wife. So I've got 3 of these different contact records. All of them have some connection to my buddy Dave here. So what do? right? Because that individual can only exist on one record. He only lives in one place. Now, for some people, they may say, well, that's fine. Just enter him on each record. So now, cool, I got 3 Daves. I got home Dave, I got work Dave, and I got, I don't know what, charitable Dave, right? And by the way, if anyone is still sitting there wondering why I have a building for a household and a building for an organization and a piggy bank for a foundation, you tell me how you would differentiate between a building that's an organization and a building that's a foundation. Pretty tough. So I had to go with the piggy bank. But so I've got home Dave, I've got work Dave, and I've got charitable Dave here. If I create all 3 of those, well, now I need to know, anytime I search for Dave, I'm going to get 3 records. Oh, man, that's kind of a mess. Then I got to figure out which one to pick. Plus, I'm going to have to put a different email address on each record because Virtuous only allows an email address to exist on one contact record. Why do we do that? We do that because email is used as a unique identifier in so many of the other systems that integrate with Virtuous. It's used as a unique identifier all over the place in a lot of different applications. And that seems like a great idea, but only if it really is a unique identifier. So I can't have dave@gmail.com on all 3 records because then, well, that torpedoes that whole idea right there. Right? I can't match to a single record. So this is where relationships, said we were going to talk about relationships. This is where relationships become super important, right? Because now I have Dave and his wife and they're at home, right? People should live at home. That's kind of where you live. And then I can use relationships to say, oh, by the way, Dave is also connected to this organization. That's his employer. He works there. And as a matter of fact, Dave is related to this foundation. That's his family's foundation. So he's got a connection there. And that's relating an individual to a contact in both cases. You can relate individuals to contacts. You can relate contacts to contacts. Or shoot, you can relate individuals to individuals. I could say Dave and, I don't know, Ted over here, they're friends. So I can relate them together as well. And then I end up with this hub and spoke sort of idea. I've got Dave at his house and his household. And if he's really got a family foundation and a business he's giving through, well, shoot, he's probably a major donor. I'm actively managing that relationship with him. So I want to be able to go to one record to see all the notes, all the history, all the interactions with him. That's my hub. And then I've got these spokes connecting Dave to these other records that he's tied to. Okay. Now, I know that brings up the question all the time, well, then what the heck do I do with those other records? In this case, it's kind of nice. I got people on every record. But every contact record in Virtuous must have at least one individual. You can't have an empty organization. Can't have an empty foundation. Why? Because we're trying to encourage you to build relationships, and you can't do that if you don't know who's there. And on a mechanical note, if I don't have a person, I have nowhere to put a phone number because that's a contact method. And remember, that's tied to an individual. So I got to have a person there. So here, again, I've got people all over. I've got Ted and, I don't know, Steve. I'm running out of fake names. They're working at the organization, right? And then I've got Sarah and I've got, I don't know, Jenny, and they're working there at the foundation. But what if Dave's the only person I know at those 2 places? Well, you can do one of 2 things. You can try to find a Steve, right? Try to find a Sarah or whoever, who's another point of contact at the organization that I can use on that record. And then in some cases, when you truly don't have a contact, then you can use a placeholder, right? The system has a default placeholder, which is first name default, last name contact. That's an excellent system placeholder. It is a terrible placeholder, though, for sending communication, because the last thing you want to do is send an email or a mailer that goes out to say, dear default. At that point, I've stopped reading, right? But if first name is friend, last name is of my organization, insert organization name here, then I'm much more likely to go ahead and read that communication, right? Not 1,000% guaranteed, but a lot more likely to read dear friend than dear default. Dear default, I'm out. That's it. So you can use a placeholder value to set up that record. And by the way, one thing that comes up a lot when it comes to this question, what if I don't have a person? Let's say you get a corporate gift. That comes in from a company. You have no personal connection there. You don't have a point of contact there. What am I going to do? I need a name for this record. Again, use the default placeholder. But I'd also argue it's a good rule of thumb to set up either a saved query or an automated task for somebody. Anytime a new record is created and the first name is default, to have them review that and give that company a call, right? You can ask for the director of corporate social responsibility, or even easier, right? Don't call and say, hey, I work for XYZ nonprofit. We got a donation from you and I need a name to put into our database. That's not going anywhere. But if you call and say, hey, I work for XYZ nonprofit. We got an amazing gift from you guys. We wanted to send something to say thank you. Who should I send a thank you to? You're much more likely to get the name of the director of corporate social responsibility or outreach or whoever. Now I've got a name I can plug into my database. And again, you can automate that. You can create tasks for somebody, give that, make that part of their gig. New records created, first name is default, they get a task to reach out. Or you could use a saved query and just make it something you do once a week. Hey, on Friday, I look at all the new records that were created with the first name default, and I try to reach out to them, see how we could connect with them. Okay, and I see questions coming through, which is excellent. I'm going to try to get to all of these as best I can here. Thank you for using that Q&A box. You can keep dropping those in. Now, the other thing we wanted to talk about today is tags. Tags are one of the other basic building blocks in Virtuous because tags are so flexible, right? Tags can be used for pretty much anything. Remember, tags are at the contact level, okay? But tags are easy to add, easy to remove, and easy to use. Tags are a great way to store things like communication preferences, right? So I want to know about my donors. I want to know the type of donor that they are, right? And I want to know, hey, how do they prefer, for example, to be receipted? And storing these as tags is ideal because, by the way, little side note, tags can be used in gift queries. And hey, I'm going to use gift queries to set up my receipting in the receipting tool. So great. I can store this on the contact record as a tag that's available in my gift query. I don't have to use nested queries. I don't have to do that extra step, go that extra layer. Okay, and that's why tags are so handy for things like that. I can also know, hey, for this organization, right, they're a gala sponsor, and they're one of the partners for our volunteer program. They always have some of their teams come over and volunteer with us, so I want to keep that in mind. And for this foundation, I know that a lot of giving I get through this foundation is going to be DAF giving, potentially. And they do want a statement, but they want me to just send them an annual statement. I'm not receipting every gift for these guys because they don't need that. Great. And again, the thing to remember, all these tags, these are all relating to the contact. They don't have anything to do with the individual. So tags are great for storing this type of information. They're not so great for identifying, well, who within that household is a volunteer, right? Who within that household is a board member? Nothing against using tags to identify board members, but I need to remember that's going to identify the household, not the person who is on the board. For storing custom data and custom values like that, your better bet is going to be to create a custom field to store that type of information. Okay. So over here, I've got a contact record up. Looky, it's like I knew this was coming. And here we've got a household. Now, whenever you look at a contact record in Virtuous, you will know the contact type because it's going to say it right here. Tells me they are a household. Easy peasy. Okay, so this is a household, and I've got Ruth and Edward in here, the Hardens, the Harden household. And again, you can see some things. So the address, right, that's related to the contact record. If I say show more right in here, it's going to show me the address. And I can have as many addresses as I want. Only one of them will be primary. They can have as many addresses as I want. I could click right here, start adding in new addresses, go bonkers. Okay. But then I've got Ruth here. Here's Ruth, and here's her contact methods. I've just got a phone or an email address, for her, but I know her birth date, right? And I've got the gender stored here, and same for Edward. I know his email address. I don't have a phone number for them. I do have a little avatar, a little photo for them that was added in. That's fantastic and handy, right? So I've got data for the contact, and I've got data for those individuals. And up here at the top of the screen, I can see they've given $2,000 life to date. That came from a single gift. Again, that's not Ruth's gift or Edward's gift. That's from the Hardens as a household. When I go to that giving tab, that's going to show me their giving. Now, on any gift, I do have the ability, again, to flag an individual. There's an individual field on here. So I can identify an individual who kind of made this gift happen, right? Who was influential, but again, that doesn't tie that gift to Ruth, right? It doesn't tie it to a member of this household. It's still giving from the Hardens as a household. Now, if I want to keep track of where Edward works, because maybe it's another one of the organizations in my database, great. That's where I can use those relationships, just like we saw when we were looking through those little heads on slides. So over here, I might have him associated with, oh boy, look at all these, the Deckau Inc. organization, okay? And when I set up a relationship, I can relate, again, two contacts to one another. I can use these radio buttons to relate individuals to one another. Or just like we saw in our little diagram, I can relate Edward, the individual, to the organization, which is the contact. And I can do that because they are his employer. Now, these relationship types, there are several that are out of the box in Virtuous. And then you can create additional types. You can add to this list. Just keep in mind that all I'm going to do when I create a relationship is I'm going to select the relationship type. And that's going to apply the inverse to the other record. Okay, maybe I can put notes on here. Edward has worked at the org since, I don't know, 2017, loyal guy. We'll save that relationship here. And now I can see, hey, Deckau Inc., they're the employer. And if I hover, it'll show me my notes in the hover text. So I know it's Edward who's worked there since 2017. And I can click this link to open that contact record. I'll just do it in a new tab over here. And now I can see Edward, and here's where I see that inverse. Edward's an employee. When you create custom relationships, you'll have to select both sides of that relationship. Okay, and that's something that as an admin, you can do from the settings. Go to all settings if I want. It's in data customization, right? This is where I can come in and I can set up my relationship types. But I'm going to have to select the relationship in the inverse, and that can only be used once. Okay, so I can't have a relationship for sister to brother and also sister to sister. That's why we in Virtuous just use sibling. That kind of covers all the bases, right? And you don't end up with weird relationships like sister to attorney. By the way, that's a real world example. I've seen that once. I don't know what's wrong with that family or what they do at Thanksgiving. It's kind of weird. But it's going to be consistent. So I need to build those relationships in a way that they're going to be consistent every time, right? Owner to business, that's going to be consistent. I can't have an owner of any other type of thing, right? If I select business, the other side's always owner. If I select owner, the other side is always business, always, always, always. And again, that's why, as opposed to sister, brother, sister, all this sibling, or, mother, daughter, mother, son, and just parent, child. Parent is always the inverse of child. That one's pretty straightforward. Some relationships have the same inverse. Spouse relates to spouse. That's fine. It can be the same on both sides. That makes perfect sense. But I can't then create another relationship for spouse to, I don't know, handyman. It'd be kind of weird. Okay. Now the other piece of this is tags. And like we said, tags are fantastic, right? They're easy to add, they're easy to manage, okay? And one of the other great things about tags, so maybe I come in here and I say, okay, I'm going to add these guys to our directors circle, and they prefer to get email receipts. That's why they gave us their email addresses. And I want to note that they are major donors. They came out of the gate with a $2,000 gift, and for me, maybe that makes you a major donor. I can add all three of these in one go. I can also use tags to track things like their interest. What types of projects or programs do they tend to support? This is where you can use things like automation to automatically apply those tags. I don't have to go in and mess around. Anyone who gives to any one of my education projects, I want to tag them as being interested in education. Let the system do that for me, right? That'll apply that education tag. Then when I want to send out an appeal for a new education initiative, I can go grab everybody tagged as being interested in education because I know they've given to that type of project before. Fantastic. And I can use that again in a gift query. I can use it in a contact query, and even easier, I can use it in the search bar right up here. If you spell the word donor correctly, I can go in and here's all my segments that have major donor, and then here's all my major donor tags. I've got a few flavors of major donor. That's how you know this is a fake account. But I've got 7 contacts who have that major donor tag right now, kind of a who's who of fake names here, and then Ruth and Edward. There they are down at the bottom. Right, so tags even make it easy to search for the contact that you want. But again, I wouldn't want to add a tag that applies just to Ruth or just to Edward. Okay, for those types of things, I'm much better suited using custom fields. And once I've created those custom fields, you'll notice there are no custom fields visible on Edward's record right now. But I have a bunch of custom fields in this database, some of which are a little bit bonkers because people use my account to test things. It happens. But I don't see any of them here because Edward doesn't have any values in those fields. We don't show you a bunch of empty fields. It's not useful. But if I were to edit Edward's record here, look at all these custom fields in here. Oh boy, he's got a bunch. So maybe I say, yes, he's willing to be a solicitor, and his favorite author is Neil Gaiman. Fantastic. He's also, maybe he is a new email subscriber. And then I can save that. Oh, yeah, he does have an invalid prefix. This is true. That's what happens. There we go. Okay, so now I've saved that, and now here are my custom field values. They weren't there before because, again, I didn't have any data for those. But as I add data, they'll appear. Okay, I have more we could do. We've got so many questions coming in. I want to stop and make sure we can address them. If you have other questions, something I haven't talked about yet, please do go ahead and send those in. We'll try to start at the top here and run down the list as best we can. I promise. It's question time. Woohoo! Okay. So the first question is a question about some of the new release features. Are they available in everyone's Virtuous automatically, or do you need to update? No need to update. We've taken care of that for you. Whenever we push out updates, those updates are available immediatamente. Okay, now, if you don't see some of them, it might mean that you maybe don't have permission to access, for example, Virtuous Giving, if you're looking for reconciliation. If you don't have access to Virtuous Giving for your account at all, you might not see those. So there could be some reasons why you don't see one particular feature or the other, but they're all available right away, right? And you'll always see the little updates. So when we looked at the import screen, we saw next to our gift import template, a little flag telling us it's an updated template. You'll see that whenever we update that template, because if you've been just kind of storing your own locally on your desktop, we want to make sure you grab the latest and greatest version. So you'll see that pop up in the tool as well, just to let you know. Okay. We had a question here on a different topic. Can you go over parent projects? I want to create 2. Specifically, does that mean I need to move all my current projects under these parent projects? Is that even possible? So the short answer to that is yes, but it will take an awful lot of work, okay? So with regard to projects, and by the way, don't forget, and this is an excellent example, you can ask any question. You've got me, the director of training in the dunk tank, for another 15 minutes. I'm always happy to talk Virtuous. It's kind of what I do. So the concept of parent project, any project can be a parent project. There's no special designation to it, no special button that I push to make it a parent project. The only key is I got to give it sub-projects. So this education project here, that's just a project. That's it. It's a parent project now because I went to the sub-projects tab and I created 2 sub-projects for it. And now they live under education. Now, I've got folks who are giving to this adult education sub-project, okay? And as a matter of fact, let's see, that's raised $563,000 and change here. But over here, if I go to the main screen for my education project, you can see this has only raised $126,000. That does not include money from the sub-projects. Otherwise, it would be a much larger number. Each of these tracks their own discrete total. They are 2 separate projects with their own separate designation amounts. Now, if I wanted to move this, let's say this adult education project, I wanted to move to a different parent project, I can't just edit the project and do that. There is no way to say, hey, select a new parent here. So as far as the process goes, what I'd have to do is create the new sub-project in the new location, wherever I want it to live. If it's going to be under this education here, I add the new sub-project. I have to give it a code that is slightly different because remember, project codes have to be unique. Then I can go in and I can use a gift query. So go to the query tool and I would create a gift query, right, to get all the gifts that have been given to the sub-project in question. I have to do this for gifts, recurring gifts, and pledges, by the way. And if you're going to do that, please, 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 you'll see all these different project fields. Please use project code. Remember, project name is not unique. It is not a unique identifier. It is a terrible way to do your financial reporting. Project codes are unique by design. So I'd want to use the project code to find all those gifts. And then once I've queried for all those gifts, I can use the bulk edit actions to move them, quote unquote, to the new project, right? So if you think about it, hey, I've got this safe in my office, but I want to install a wall safe in the master bedroom. Well, first things first, I got to get somebody to come install the new safe in the master bedroom. Then I'm going to open up the safe in the office. I'm going to take all the money out of it. I'm going to take it upstairs and put it in the new safe in the new master bedroom. Then I can get rid of the old safe in my office. Okay, so I'll create the new project in the new location, then I'll edit the gifts, recurring gifts, and pledges to move them to the new sub-project. Then I can delete the original sub-project. So is it impossible to move projects from one parent to another? No, but it is going to take some manual work. Okay. So we have another question here. Is there a way to bulk archive 15,000 contacts that have an email status as dropped? And if not, how can I exclude them when creating a new list? Well, the key here is to remember exactly what we've just been talking about, right? A contact cannot have an email status at all because contacts don't have email addresses, right? Individuals have email addresses. So I can do anything that I want to in a contact query. And one of the bulk actions from a contact query is to archive. So I can bulk archive contacts from a query. That's just fine. But if I want to get folks whose email status is dropped, that's individuals. That's a different story, right? I can't do that. I can't use that data in my contact query. I could. Right? I could build an individual query for everybody whose emails have dropped, and I could nest that into my contact query. Right? I can use that nested query functionality to do that. And then I could archive those contacts. But again, within that contact, I could have one person whose emails are getting dropped and another person who's getting them just fine. So I don't necessarily want to do that. Right? I don't want to exclude them. Now, what I can do is create an individual query for all those folks whose emails are getting dropped. And when I go to send an email, I can filter them out Because remember, when you send an email, if I'm in Virtuous Marketing, and I know we're hopping around here, this is actually kind of fun. We should just do one of these where it's just Q&A, throw questions at the training guy. I don't know. If you guys would like to do that, let me know. I'm always game for it. What the heck? Why not? So let's say workflow email is false. We'll get an actual email here. Great. This one looks fantastical. I got all these things here. It is great. Let's use this one, my newest email. Fantastic. When I go through and I go to send this particular email, all right, we've got one person voting to have just an open Q&A, throw questions at the training guy, stump the trainer. I'm fine with that. When I go to send an email to my list here, I can use queries to either include or exclude, and these can be contact queries or they can be individual queries. So this is where I could filter out those individuals who are not getting my emails as often or whatever it is I want to do. I can filter them out of any send when I go to send my email. Okay, so will WePay users have the reconciliation function added? Is it only for Stripe? So again, that's something that's only available for Stripe users. We don't have that same ability to build that for WePay. So it's something we can only do with Stripe and the way that that's structured. Okay. I had a donation given in Virtuous through a general organization that processes tax-deductible receipts. I wanted to thank the person who sent the gift, but do not have any such info. How do I get detailed info of the person who made the donation? Well, if Virtuous never received the information on the donor, there's not going to be a way to find out who that donor was, right? So if this came from an organization that is a third party that's collecting donations on your behalf, and they're simply giving you, some of the, hey, here's how much you got, there isn't going to be a way for me to access that donor information to give them a personal thank you. Okay, are there feature updates pending related to querying on relationships? I have trouble relaying information about different relationship groups. Would love the option to just query based on a relationship. Well, you can already query based on a relationship. Shoot, we've got that there. So I can go into a query. Let's do a contact query, for example, right? And I can query based on relationships. So I can come in here, and again, if you never know what's in the query tool, just start typing. Like if you just start type RELAT, like, hey, here's a bunch of stuff. So I can query based on the relationship type or the related contact ID. So related contact ID meaning, hey, give me all the contacts that are related to contact 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't care what the relationship type is. I don't care anything. I just want to know, give me all the contacts related to contact 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Or I can use relationship type, right? So relationship type is employee. Remember, we looked at that earlier. So that would mean give me everybody in the database who is an employee. I don't care who they're an employee of. I want them to be an employee. If I want them to be an employee of a certain company or organization, again, related contact ID is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That would give me everybody in the database, every contact that's an employee of organization that's contact 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can also do this in an individual query. So I do have some query parameters specific to individuals. This is great. I like this because I'll say, I know we release features so quickly, sometimes I don't even remember what we have out there. So this is good. We have an individual who gives through 9 different business entities. Good on them, but we need to aggregate all giving to him as the high capacity donor. What's the best way to make sure he ends up on our query for all donors in that category? In terms of that, remember, I'm going to be using pass-through giving to track that. Right? I'm going to be using pass-through giving because that person, they're going to have their household contact record. Okay, so whoever they are, it doesn't really matter. But I'm going to have their household contact record. So I've got my friends in here. We've probably seen them in this webinar. Gosh, I don't know how many times. We got good old Harry and Sally here. Okay. But Harry and Sally, I've got their household, but they also sometimes give through Harry's business or give donor advised fund giving to family through their foundation or the community foundation, what have you. Well, I'm going to track that giving as pass-through giving. So when those gifts come in from those third parties, or in this case, those 9 different business entities, I want to make sure they're identified as the pass-through. And you can use that pass-through import we looked at the beginning. But here's all their pass-through gifts. Now, to your question of how do I make sure they show up as one of my big donors because their giving is split among all these entities, remember, I have the ability to include pass-through giving in my statistics. Okay. Shoot, I can even include it in my giving overview up here if I want to, little checkbox. Do you want to include pass-through giving? Yay or nay? Okay. When it comes to the query tool, and looky here, we happen to have a contact query. That's pretty handy. I've got the ability, let's just say we're using life to date. Now this could apply to year to date and all kinds of other things, right? But let's narrow the thing down. So let's say life to date. Life to date giving would be direct giving. So Harry and Sally, that's the gifts they've given. They wrote a personal check. Life to date pass-through giving. What have they given through all those other third parties, no matter how many there are, life to date. And then life to date plus pass-through giving. So in your example here, hey, how much is this person given directly and through those other 9 entities all at once? Whenever I'm doing my segmentation, I'm identifying my best donors, my major donors, I would use that life to date or year to date or whatever it is plus pass-through. That's going to give me the combined total, the real picture of their giving. Okay. Let's see. There was a question about the best uses for custom collections. Boy, we could spend an hour on that. I know we had a whole webinar where we did talk about this. And that was in the second half of last year. But with custom collections, the idea there is I'm actually creating a custom object, right? Because I might have more than one entry. So think about contact notes. Imagine if for contact notes, all you had on a contact record is a single field like this here to put in notes. That wouldn't be very helpful. I'm going to have notes coming in all the time, for crying out loud. Next time I talk to them, new note. So contact notes have to have their own object. They have to exist so I can keep adding them, right? Gifts, same thing. Imagine if you had one field for gifts. You just had to keep adding each gift. That would be bonkers. So there are other times when you have that sort of thing, and you want to store that custom data. Some of the examples that we have, at least in here, right? We had some things for like host families and tutoring, et cetera, to be able to see, okay, well, they're tutoring some students, right? How many of them are they tutoring? And I can add that in because someone might work with a single student or they might work with multiple students, and I want to keep track of that, right? So if I don't know what the cap is, could be one, could be several. If it's something that I'm going to have regular entries for, hey, have they signed up for our training program to be a volunteer? Have they attended the volunteer reorientation session? Every time they do that, I want to know. That's a great case for a custom collection. And again, we do have a recorded webinar that goes through some more of that too. I'd recommend checking that out. That is in our support center. Does Virtuous sync to Mailchimp and to Calendar? To Calendar, no. To Mailchimp, yes. There is a Mailchimp Sync. There's an article for that in our support center as well. However, one thing to keep in mind with Mailchimp, it syncs at the contact level. It uses tags as a matter of fact. Look how we tied that back around. And because of that, in this household, for example, where I've got Harry and I've got Sally, and they've both got email addresses, that Mailchimp Sync is only going to sync one of them, not both. Right, but I can do that. How can I add a contact's birthday or anniversary? So remember, and this is where I'm going to get really specific, right? And this is where you get into trouble. And I push this all the time, and there's a reason, right? Contacts can't have a birthday. A contact has no birthday. There is no such thing as a birthday for my household. But I have a birthday. Each one of my kids has a birthday. My wife has a birthday. So if you want to add someone's birthday, remember, I have to be editing an individual. Okay, once I've selected Harry, then I can edit the record, and then I can go ahead and add in the birth month, day, and year. Totally fine. Okay. Along with a receipt, how can I upload an acknowledgement letter to automatically go out like a receipt? Well, that would be a receipt. You could use the receipting tool to send that out. If you wanted to send a different type of letter automatically, you could use letters on demand with Virtuous automation to send that out. You'd have to create that template in Virtuous. Okay. Can I create a custom field list for selecting multiple options? No, right now I don't have the ability to multi-select in a list. Each of those options would have to be a separate true or false option in order to do that. If I have an individual with 2 businesses that's donated directly to us from each of his businesses, how do you sort it out? Where do you put him as an individual? Going back to our slides, I want that individual to live at home. Everybody should live at home, right? That's where you want to be. And then I can relate you to each of your businesses, but I should have that relationship with them at their household, because I'd imagine that they're going to give personally at some point, even if they haven't yet. Okay. The data health tool shows when different contacts have the same email address. Is it possible to search for contacts where 2 or more individuals have the same email address? It's not, but you can search for contacts that have a particular email address, but I don't have email count. And again, Virtuous by design does not allow the same email address to exist on more than one contact. It will, however, if that data already existed in your legacy CRM. We allow that in because we know that that email address might be tied to several other things, and we don't want to break those associations. Okay. We've got so many questions here. We've got some on automation. We've got some on exports. I would love to be able to get to them all. I wish I could, and it looks like some of these are votes for just having an open Q&A. We had a question here about sending out tax receipts. I will say there are several articles that exist on our receipting and receipting tool from the support center. So that's the best place to find that. I'll try to follow up with some of these other questions as best we can. But I do know we are a couple minutes over our time. I don't want to blow up everybody's day. That would be cruel and mean. So I'll call an end to question time just for now. But I will remind you, please do join us next time. We're going to be doing this same sort of thing. We're trying to get cozy with campaigns. It's another big structural element that I feel like everybody really does need to kind of get their head around a little bit more and feel more comfortable with. So many people could do so many of the things they want to do with campaigns, but I don't think everybody always realizes that they can do that. So we're going to try to get into that there. And as always, I do try to leave you with something from someone smarter than me, and this month is a twofer. Just in terms of getting back to the basics, John Wooden, legendary basketball coach, said champions are brilliant at the basics. And twofer, both basketball themed, Michael Jordan himself, if you get the fundamentals down, the level of everything you do will rise. And that's what we said at the beginning. You get your head around this structure, you get your head around contacts and individuals and what relates to what, shoot, your ability to create workflows and automation sequences and everything is going to go up and up and up and up because you have a greater facility and a greater comfort level with building some of those things. Okay, thank you so much, everybody, for joining me. I'll look to add some just freebie Q&A time here in one of our upcoming webinars. That seems to be a popular request. And everybody, enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, everyone.